It's interesting when you create a video about a certain topic, say AGI, and you make one flippant comment about another unrelated topic, which is kind of hilarious because we're in the middle of deporting a bunch of people, and I'm not sure why then we would take in South Africans, but such is life. And then you receive as many comments about that auxiliary topic as you do about the actual topic of the video. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to dive into my actual opinions on that flippant topic and see if we could start a dialogue on the situation. Why do I think South Africans should not be allowed entry to the United States under the asylum-seeking refugee status? First and foremost, the United States government is currently in the process of trying to deport at least a portion of the 8.6 million immigrants who entered our country illegally over the past 4 years. Of those, 5.8 million claimed asylum status, meaning that at least 2/3 said that they were in the exact same situation as the South Africans. And we are still trying to round them up and deport them. Also, almost immediately after Trump came into office, this flow of immigrants has seen a steep decrease of 93% over the exact same timeframes while Biden was in office, with March seeing the lowest monthly number of border encounters in recorded history at less than 7,200. So, did the world just become a safer place and nobody is seeking asylum anymore? Or, more likely, were they all lying? Why should we take in a single additional refugee until that situation is resolved and these people are all sent back to their countries of origin? But these South Africans are actually seeking asylum. Let's dive into that. I want to start at the most logical point. What is genocide? Genocide is defined as the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group of people based on their ethnicity, nationality, religion, or race. Unsurprisingly, this term was created to describe what was happening to the Jews during World War II. I do have a bit of a problem with this definition, though, as I feel it's excessively broad and could be applied to the majority of conflicts throughout history, including wars. Would you say that the Greco-Persian Wars were a genocide? That seems unlikely. So how would I modify the definition to better reflect what I view as a genocide? I would have one simple addition, and that would be that the group being targeted is not capable of meaningfully defending themselves against their aggressors. So, in 1933 in Germany, when Jewish citizens were being rounded up by the Nazi regime, the Jews had no practical way to fight back, as they were citizens who were not allowed to own firearms, with no ability to fight against an army. So why don't I think the current situation in South Africa is a genocide? South Africa is a violent place. Out of 197 countries, South Africa has the third highest rate of murder behind only Jamaica and Ecuador. And drilling down further into the murder statistics, although white South Africans make up approximately 8% of the population, they account for less than 2% of murder victims. Having worked for companies that cherry-pick numbers to sell narratives, I can confidently say that the people trying to sell the whole white genocide narrative have done just that. They selected a subset of the population in one profession, namely farming in this instance, where white South Africans make up 70% of landowners. Then, when the farmers get targeted because they live in the third most violent country in the world, and because they also are located in very rural areas and are easy targets due to their isolation and lack of proximity to law enforcement, guess what? Well, now whites are being disproportionately targeted, except they aren't. Even within this subset of farm violence, from April to December of 2024, there were 19,696 murders in all of South Africa, of which only 36 of those murders were connected to farms. Only 7 of those victims were farmers themselves, and the remaining 29 victims were farm workers, who are predominantly black in South Africa. It is hard to paint the precise picture of how many white farmers were killed. However, even with a generous interpretation of this data, it is extremely unlikely that 70% of the farmers and farm workers killed were white, as 81% of this subset were likely black. Now, toss on a quote like "kill the Boers" from an extremist government official whose party only received an 11% vote count in the most recent election, who has also been renounced by current leadership, and you could craft a compelling narrative to make people think whites are being systematically targeted, instead of what the truth is, that these people live in the third most dangerous country in the world, and even in the group of farmers, blacks are being killed at a higher rate, despite whites being 70% of the landowners. Can we also stop pretending that anyone, including Donald Trump, would even remotely care about this issue if it wasn't a pet project for the richest South African, fresh off donating hundreds of millions of dollars to the Republican Party? In fact, Trump actually looked into this same issue in 2018 under similar claims of white farmers being targeted by a genocide, and found that during the previous year, there were 50 total killings, marking the lowest rate of farmers being murdered in 20 years. And back to my altered definition of genocide, according to Ernest Rhodes, a white South African, during an interview that he had with Tucker Carlson, he admitted that simply hiring personal security, a very common occurrence in South Africa, reduced or completely eliminated the incidence of crime on farms, not only proving that these farmers are on equal or stronger ground than those supposedly targeting them, but also that these crimes are in fact out of convenience, as I don't think an ideological radical would be so dissuaded from violence by a personal security force. Sorry, but that doesn't seem like a genocide to me, even by the traditionally held definition. And where are those decrying these attacks as genocide when it comes to issues the United States is directly implicated in? Last I checked, there are still tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians who have been bombed in Gaza with billions of dollars in U.S. ordinances. Or how about the Uyghur Muslims in China being sent to re-education camps where they are then forced into slave labor? I guess Elon doesn't want to bring attention to that one, since it would undoubtedly hurt his production for Tesla. The point is, there are a lot of much more noble causes that should come well before white South Africans. And even then, I don't want any of them here until we get rid of all of the illegals allowed to flood into our country during the last 4 years, already draining our tax dollars through welfare provided to them. Until that time comes, I'm just going to continue making flippant remarks about the white genocide in South Africa. Well, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Feel free to drop a thumbs up if you liked the topic of this video, or if this helped shine a little bit more light onto what exactly is going on in South Africa. Leave me your comment on what you think is going on there. Like I said, the last video where I kind of briefly touched on this topic, the comment section went wild. So I'm very curious to see if people are a little bit more aligned after hopefully understanding a little bit more of what's going on there. But again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.